is kind of stupid. They're both selling shoes, and one of them's like Nike or something. They sell running shoes, and the other one sells like dress formal shoes. The running shoe one is catering towards athletic people and not really anyone else.
What the fuck is he talking about right now?
And anyone that wants an athletic shoe. And the dress shoe company is not catering to athletic people. It's catering to people that need like nice clothes for like going out to eat or whatever. But they both have the same goal, and it's to make money from selling shoes. They don't actually. I think I've learned that a lot of like, you know how there's like weird companies, like why would anyone want to sell like fucking like shower curtains or something?
Yeah, or like okay, one of those is like silverware. I'm like, somebody had to design this fork, and like it's a piece of metal with 4 sticks on the end. Like, and people have to buy it.
Like no one like goes in wanting to be a silverware producer, but they want to be be a business that makes money.
Yeah.
So they see a market and they go into it. This is why the Democratic and Republican Party, like their views are meaningless, because they don't actually care about what they're talking about. They're just trying to get people to vote for them. That's it. Because they make a lot of money, and 2, they get a lot of power, which is all they care about. If you have the Democratic and Republican Party isn't like, the Democratic Party doesn't represent left people, and the Conservative Party doesn't represent right people, or people on the right wing. It represents the people that are in the party, which isn't that many people. It's these like shady government people that either aren't really in the public eye or are, but you don't really know much about them, because what they put up as their like public thing is mostly lies.
Like advertisements.
Like it's a business. It's like advertising. So it's your when you vote, whichever side you vote, well, like campaign promises will almost never come true. Because they don't actually care about doing it. Once they're in office, the only thing they care about is staying in office. Everything else is just whatever. There are some politicians, I assume, that actually want to serve and help America, but they get shit on because they don't have connections to the people at the top.
High Key the Truth by Kel Rant.
There's a few examples of that. People that are really well-meaning, like politicians that are running for like office, but they don't go anywhere because, one, they don't have any money. They have money, but they don't have nearly enough. And
it costs like millions and millions.
Oh yeah, hundreds of millions. I think Hillary spent like I think it was Trump spent 60 million and Hillary spent like 180 million or something.
Yeah. Something like that, and like, and that's why a lot of people like go for they end up signing with like the parties because they offer the funding for it, and that's why it's basically impossible to ever see like a non-affiliated candidate running.
And the like independent ones never go far.
Yeah.
Like whatever, I don't remember, like Gary or whatever, I don't remember his full name.
Gary Johnson.
Yeah, I think so. He didn't get many votes, and he got more than what the independent usually gets. But he still got like maybe like 5%, maybe. So it's nowhere close to independent being able to win or even come close. As long as the party system is a thing. And what I don't think I'll ever vote. Like I'm not like that's not like definite. Maybe I will change my mind, but if to me it seems sort of immoral, because
What?
Voting. Like, if I vote, but whoever I vote for, I'm like supporting the same shit system. I don't even like George Carlin, but there's this one like stand-up bit by him where he's talking about how stupid it is, how people say like, if you didn't vote, you can't complain. That doesn't make any sense.
That's facts.
No, if it's I didn't vote, like, okay, there's like bad stuff happening in the government. Why is it? It's not. I didn't vote because I didn't want it to happen.
How
I didn't support those. It's like there's two like possible presidents, and I don't like either of them, so I'm not gonna vote for either of them. And when, like, can you imagine if like barely anyone voted? They would probably change the system. I don't know, but it's pretty pitiful. Like half of the people in the United States don't vote or so. I think it was even less than half, like significantly less than half during the last election.
Because you gotta use like you color. No offense.
But imagine if like 1% of people voted. That'd be cool, because they'd probably have to change it.
Have to change what?
Like the system. Like, because people... I think like by voting, it's sort of like saying that you're happy with how the system is. It's not
saying, taking part in your
not really a
government, but it's whatever.
Democracy. In some ways, it's sort of weird how like some of it is a democracy and some of it isn't.
Just typical leftist views, you know how it is.
But
nothing you can do about it.
People already treat the news like it's sports, and it kind of is the way they market. Well, it is the way they market it. It's like sports.
They do it for, you know, they got to get views and stuff, so they, you know, show what's popular.
The real reason why like a lot of like every news station's like constantly been shitting on Trump for like 2 years is because people watch it. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think
Nothing
you
else
was
to
going in that
it.
direction with it. Never mind, you're good.
And it's gonna be the case with like every
Like,
president.
the Russia collusion thing has been going on since his election. Has there been?
It's nothing. It's like
Collusion is a
hate.
big word,
Has there been any progress to it? No. Still gonna cover it because people are still gonna watch it.
And it's funny how like narrow-sighted people are with the Russia thing. Okay, maybe Russia did interfere with the election, and then like 80 other things did too. Like, why just this one? I don't. People are still like anti-Russia. It's like a leftover sentiment from like the Cold War that hasn't gone away.
Move to Russia, Kel. You'll see.
There's this deep fear that's been like it's programmed to be like ingrained in your mind of being afraid of communism.
Are you advocating for communism right now?
It's fueled by American propaganda.
Killer.
If you even think about the situation of the Cold War for more than like 10 seconds, you realize that the reason
it's pretty dumb. Like, we didn't like the way other people were running their countries in other parts of the world, so we're like, you should run it our way. And then we spend like tons of money, start spying, all sorts of other stuff. Nothing really happens except like some places like fall apart and like USSR gets like disbanded, and then like
good shit.
Let's just ruin relations with like half the countries in the world.
That's what the U.S. does.
You gotta do what you gotta do, kinda. That's how it works.
The reason why communism was spreading is because these countries that are very poor were like, we're tired of being shit on by every other country, and we're tired of being poor. So let's adopt a system that helps us not be as poor. And then the government, and then the U.S. is like, don't do that, no. Like,
you can't say that.
Yeah. And And that's pretty much all there was to it. And people think that communism is like a really bad thing when, yeah, there's been poor applications of it. But like Lenin's capitalism before Stalin took over was fine. Like there wasn't really corruption or anything weird going on. Stalin's was flawed, but even then, people make up shit about it. Like people like to talk about how there was no food in Russia in like the Cold War, and people were like starving.
Bears.
That's first of all, that's everywhere. There's like people that are starving and poor in every country.
Especially black people. No
And the
offense.
whole like breadlines
All of
thing
us.
is ridiculous. Like, why you like your people's like one up is that people had to wait in line for something. Like you have to wait in line when you go to check out at Publix. Like this isn't like
That's why you go
whatever.
self-checkout.
Anyway, I might have told you this before, but like
Playing devil's
in the
advocate,
Cold War
don't get to do
time,
that 'cause he's religious.
Russian people had a
Maybe so.
higher intake of calories than American people did, on average, by a little bit. So it's not like they were just like starving to death, everyone. And Russia never intentionally tried to starve its people, except for in Ukraine, because they hate Ukraine.
Fuck Ukraine.
But in any poor part of Russia during the Cold War, they were trying to help it, which is kind of ironic because the U.S. doesn't really do that with its own poor areas. People are so. Another example, since like people are talking about like socialism a lot now, idiots that think they're like brain geniuses for talking about Venezuela and Cuba not going so well and they're socialists. It's like if you take a country that has no money like Venezuela and you put socialism on it, it's not gonna be like, oh, everything's cool now. It's like saying the equivalent argument would be like, oh, you think capitalism's cool? Look at like Niger or like Chad or like some of these like African countries that have like a collective like $1.
Oh,
Like,
no.
it's such a stupid argument. It's really
I'm
annoying.
pretty sure no matter what like economic system you choose to put in like a poor country, it'll like generally like not do good.
And there are countries that are socialist that, well, okay, first of all, socialism isn't like it's not like, okay, we are socialist now. It's like a spectrum.
What the fuck does that mean, Kelly?
The country can't be socialist. It can have socialist, every country has some
You already fucked
socialist laws, some communistic laws, some capitalistic laws, and some have more than others. The U.S. mostly has capitalistic laws, but has some socialistic and communistic laws. Like, for example, companies can't just do whatever they want. Like, there's some restrictions.
There's some regulation on it. It's not complete capitalism.
A completely a completely free market is how you get like child slaves and just slaves in general. You get people working like 90 hours a week, and then they're like 6 years old and they die because of no regulations. That's what it looks like to have a completely
Oh,
free
should be
market.
real.
Cookie clicker upgrade child labor.
Yeah. And they're making like a penny an hour. This is why people do. The reason why they go in other countries is because they don't have these regulations, and they can pay their workers like $1 a day in their sweatshops that are unsafe. I think the U.S. seems to give an illusion that the U.S. has less money than it actually does. It's just that they waste it on stupid shit. Because
Like
the
you.
people that run the government
No offense.
don't seem to
Yeah,
know,
correct.
are pretty
you,
bad
but
at
black
managing
people, of
money
course.
if you think about it.
Yeah. And like the whole debt thing, like you know how that works?
Yeah.
Where they're like, they reach like a time limit, and if they don't like have enough funds by a certain amount, like they have to get a loan for stuff, and then without having to like have resolved any of the debt, which allows them to just like take out more and more loans and stuff, which just like, you know, means you don't have to ever pay off the debt.
So fucked. And part of it is because instead of like spending money on like, you know, things that would help people in the United States, they just dump like $1 trillion into like a set of like fighter jets or whatever, so they can go kill more like farmers in like Afghanistan. The military costs so much fucking for nothing too. It's like 30% of what the U.S. tax like goes to.
Like, it'd be more understandable if we were like in a war or something.
That's what I'm saying.
But
We're
like,
not.
Gotta be prepared for a
there's
war,
no
though.
war going on right now.
If you're not
The U.S.
prepared, you're
hasn't been
gonna
in a
fucking
war since the
lose.
40s.
You know what would be cool for them to spend stuff on?
What?
Space.
Yeah.
They already
Space
are.
Race 2. That'd be pretty cool. Like, US and Russia trying to like get to like Mars first.
It's way more interesting than just
Yeah,
like killing
like
people
new
for no
technology,
reason.
like
Is it though?
competition in like space like industry, and like like tons of like economic growth from jobs for like new factories and like space research and stuff.
The entirety of like the NASA stuff and like the 50s and 60s probably cost as much as like 1 year of military operation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
That's
less, honestly.
Possible.
I don't know how much
I
it
don't think
costs.
so. I'd
Like,
to
I mean,
get
I get
statistics on
having
that,
like
research together and
national defense is,
back to
you
the
know,
source.
Yeah.
important,
I'd like to
but
see that, to be honest. It sounds really
instead of
interesting.
like
Keep it buck.
instead of constantly growing it, if anything, just keep it the same and use funds that you would have used to grow the amount of like aircraft carriers into like science stuff or something. Like
And what
being
are they-
scientifically more advanced than and like intellectually more advanced is like important in terms of like world standing for countries and stuff. So like, especially in times of like not war, compared to having like lots of jets and stuff.
I think it's interesting how in the
Are you gonna
Cold
be
War
prepared,
there
though?
was not
Or
there was
what
a
are you gonna
lot
do?
of
You're gonna have fucking
things the
nobody
U.S. did to try
fight
to
the war.
outdo
then?
Russia.
You're fucked.
Like the space race, for example. But one
Uh-huh.
thing I learned about recently was they wanted to outdo them in art. They,
That's
you
not
know,
much
like
I've ever heard. Leadership
some
right there.
famous artists from the mid
Fuck
1900s,
is
like Andy Warhol and like Jackson Pollock.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why they got so famous is because the CIA funded them and advertised them.
Really?
This is real. I didn't know about this.
Wow. So like, because they wanted to have, just like the space race, they wanted to prove like, oh look, our like American art. Oh.
They were like cutting edge artists, and like started bringing in like a new new styles for art, and they America wanted to show the world that they were advanced artistically and culturally too. So it's not like a slam on like Warhol and Pollock. It's just that the reason why they just were the ones that got popular is because they were kind of chosen. People nowadays don't really become famous just from out of nowhere for being an artist, you know. Except like it's rare, especially when they're not like spearheading like a social movement, like Basquiat or whatever, or that guy, I don't remember his name, the guy that would do the stickman drawings in New York.
Oh, Fancy
Keith
Pants
Haring. Yeah. It's like this crap. The guy that makes this stuff.
Ah.
He was like an underground artist that got famous for making murals in New York. And so was Basquiat, actually. Whereas Warhol and Pollock were just like painters. Like they were innovative, but they didn't get famous like naturally. They got funded by the CIA. Anyway. Also, I don't think that any economic system really works fully. Everything sort of it goes in cycles, and people seem to forget that. Countries become more socialist and then more capitalist, kind of go back and forth. I think all systems, well, at least in the ways they've been implemented so far, all systems all systems are unsustainable. For example, I think American capitalism is unsustainable because in previous times, other countries' capitalism has also been unsustainable. Russia has long since been one of the most wealthy countries in the world, and in the 1800s, it was a capitalist country, just like America, and it eventually reached a breaking point in the early 1900s.
Where they then turned over in communist revolution.
And
then eventually that kind of like died off.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of poor planning with not the U.S. Well, like Lenin's thing was fine, and then when he died and Stalin took over, and the U.S. fucking things up, that just sort of like sped it up. Generally, the wars and like how big Russia is was a problem. And some bad decisions with like people.
How big it is in like allocation of like resources and.
It eventually just fell apart. But never believe someone that says that communism in Russia under Stalin was always a bad thing. It worked. It actually did work. It wasn't like shit from day one. It eventually did fall apart from bad planning many decades later, though. And then now Russia's back to being, I would say, like socialist, kinda. Probably capitalist leaning on socialist. They're not like super socialist, but there are more than the U.S. is. In China, for example.
They're still communist.
Yeah, and China's like is one of the richest countries in the world.
Yeah.
I think communism is a little too much. Like it's something that sounds good in theory, but is iffy in implementation most of the time.
Because like China, for example, they're one of the richest countries in the world, but like, where's all like the stuff like mass-produced? China for like super cheap.
So I think theoretically, I've been thinking about how you can describe the ancient tribes, Native American kind of stuff as anarcho-communist, where it was an anarchy, as in there wasn't like law enforcement or really rules, but it was communist in that people pretty much understood to help other people, and it wasn't like a big deal.
Yeah, like 5 men go out and kill like 3 buffalo. They take it back and the whole tribe eats or whatever.
And then when you add like way more people, it's just and like more structure, it starts to get fucky. and there's no system that really works that well.
Mhm.
I think some of the dumbest people in the world are libertarians. These are people. A libertarian is when someone says they're uh, like socially on the left and economically on the right, where they aren't like racist or anything, and they like are like progressive, but they still follow very capitalist ways of money and stuff. These are the people that wish they couldn't, they wish they didn't have to pay any taxes. They're like a lot of, you know, when they like constantly propose tax cuts, like a lot of the one of the big things that Republicans use to like market their party is that they will cut taxes, which is ridiculous to me because I think, well, I understand not liking how taxes work right now in America because you can think that the taxes aren't allocated effectively, which I agree with, but say that taxes are like bad is just ridiculous to me. Like, it's better in other countries, like England uses their taxes better, but for example, I read something where it's like you in a country like England, they look around and you see your kids going to public school, and there's like crosswalk guards and police officers keeping them safe, and they have free health care, so they don't have if you get in a car accident, you're not in debt for the rest of your life, and just stuff like that, and like social programs that help you. Why is this like a negative to people? Like, why is this not like obvious that yeah, it's a good thing that taxes exist so the government can help people? Like, if people weren't taxed, or if taxes were optional, one, no one would pay them probably, and two, it would kind of devolve into the government not being able to do anything productive or helpful to people. So I understand the idea that the government doesn't use the tax money effectively, but to like say like taxation is theft or whatever is just stupid.
Kind of like what the 13 colonies under the Articles of Confederation, which is like the precursor to the Constitution. They couldn't raise enough money to like do anything. Because they didn't have like one of the nowhere in it did it say like the government has the right to tax or whatever.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, we talked about that in like last semester's government thing, and that's why that eventually fell apart, and then was then replaced by the Constitution. But like they couldn't really raise enough taxes to pay for national army stuff at the time, so yeah.
I think the reason why the people in the colonial times were upset about Britain taxing them is nothing to do with the fact that they were getting taxed. It's that
that they were getting like controlled by something that's far away.
Before, another thing is that the Revolutionary War didn't just happen because they were mad. Benjamin Franklin visited Britain and talked to the like king and stuff, and all he wanted was that the colonies would have one seat in the parliament for voting on like laws and shit. And they said no. So they tried to reason with them. I don't know how many seats were in it, but a lot more, or like a lot.
Yeah,
so
like one is like one I would imagine is like nothing.
Yeah.
If it's like a okay, it's definitely not a two-person thing. It's probably got like I don't know, just a guess is like 20.
Mm-hmm.
Still, that's like 1/20th.
So they didn't ask for
to...
much. They were
Yeah.
trying to like be diplomatic with it, and then after that, like almost just to spite them, England out of nowhere just started taxing them without like, and that's what got them mad because England basically saying, no, we're just gonna do whatever we want. You.
Okay. I gotta go.
No, see ya.
See ya.
The fuck? Well, I'm gonna keep recording the gameplay. I don't give a fuck. If anybody ever even watches this, if I ever even put this anywhere, probably won't. But you know, I might show it to like Pete or something. So you never know. What the fuck? Oh, that's that, I guess. Nice. Oops. Damn. Jesus Christ. Fuck is that guy's engine sound? sucks. My God, these guys suck. Whew. Nice shot. God. What are they fucking doing? Oh my God. This car. Well, at least I got a decryptor. Nice. Fucking great, bro. Yo, it's fucking great. That's cute. What was I doing? Oh yeah. You gotta be fucking kidding me. F4. Nice. Well, now that Kel Rant's over and my gameplay's turned to shit, I'm gonna fucking go. See you guys later. I don't know who the fuck you guys are, but, you know, whatever. Fuck.